According to some TikTok famous reviewers, Echo is unwatchable, ju- just like She-Hulk and Miss Marvel. Might be me, but I sense a pattern here. But at least now I know who I can't take seriously anymore. If you don't watch it, shut your mouth. This is the review of champions, and I'm your host, Grandmaster. With me is a powerful panel made up of the finest champions Cigar has to offer. Let me introduce them to you. First up, voice only, we have Lokismom. How are you?
I'm doing really good, Lord Grandmaster.
I'm not a lord, I'm still a master.
Well, you're Lord Grandmaster to me.
Oh, okay. Oh, that actually feels good. Um, back on the show, we have Merv. How are you, man?
Doing very good, Grand Lord Master.
Oh my god, this is becoming a thing. And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Taylor first. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Good. Um, today we're going to talk about Echo, the latest Marvel
Echo.
Disney Plus show. But before we do, I want to ask you all to help us out. Like and share this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you really can't get enough of us, you can join our ranks. Go to Sacar.freeform.net, set up an account, get to know us, and yes, you can join us in our reviews or podcasts. We would love to have you on the show. This is the part where I'm going to give you your final warning. After this point, the spoilers are incoming, so if you haven't seen the show yet, go do that first and then check out our review. And please check out our review. Um, well, Echo. Echo shows how the story of Maya Lopez continues after we last saw her in Hawkeye. And she's out for vengeance. Taylor, we're going to talk about 5 episodes all at once. So let me have your first quick thoughts on the show as a whole. What did you think of Echo?
I liked it. I was very entertained. I thought it was, for the most part, well executed, well acted, well written. Overall, I had a very good time watching it. I think it's so worthy as a MCU spotlight, whatever they're calling it now. It has its own new spotlight logo thing going on. That's fine to have a side story about a particular character. Um, Overall, very positive.
Yeah, um, I tend to agree, but let's dive into that later. Merv, same question. How did you like Echo?
Uh, Pretty much the same answer. I liked it a lot. It had a few issues, but nothing that really brought it down to like She-Hulk levels for me. I'd still, I mean, I could watch it again today and be perfectly happy. Yeah, I thought it was a really good like follow up to Hawkeye, in depth look at the Echo character. I loved a lot of the action sequences. I liked a lot of where the story took it. And they'd made a lot of unique choices that I really applaud them for. They were bold moves in this show that I don't want to overlook. So yeah, I had a good time.
We're going to unpack that in a minute. But first, of course, I'm going to ask Loki's mom the same question as I did the gentleman before you. Did you like Echo?
Yes, I did. It was very entertaining. I think it was up on the same level. I think quality wise as Miss Marvel. There were some parallels to that story too. I think the Lopez and uh, golly, what's her Khan
Kamala.
Kamala. Yeah, that some parallels there because there was a lot of backstory and how those powers came to them. Yeah, for I forget whatever Miss Marvel's was, but then she had the rings or whatever,
The
and then
bangles.
or the gauntlet, and then Echo has the what's called, I guess, the Echo power that has came down through the generations to her. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting, and I liked how they did that. And I
Mhm.
think I believe at the very end they credited the Choctaw Nation. The writers had gone in and wanted to represent their lore as accurately as possible. So I appreciate that they did that.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. I absolutely like that Echo as well. As Merv said, there are some issues, but it's certainly not the best thing since Sliced Bread. But it's also not as atrocious as some people make it out to be on the internet. But that's usually the case. If people say something is awful, they probably haven't watched it or are biased or whatever. It's a fine show. We're going to discuss that also a little bit later. How we have to see how Marvel Studios is doing at the moment. But for me, it was a fine show. I enjoyed it very much. There were some very many highlights, some low points. But we're going to discuss that now. And I'm going to start with you, Merv. Um, let's get the issues out of the way, and then you can rant how much you loved Echo.
Sure. Well, so the two bigger issues I had with the show, there are some smaller ones, but the two bigger issues is the biggest one is it didn't fully stick the landing for me, meaning that climactic confrontation between Echo and Kingpin. I get what they were going for, but I don't know if there wasn't enough time for me to buy into it or for me to understand the full character growth or to really get where she was kind of choosing to be more peaceful than warrior. I don't know. It was kind of I wanted a big, nice fight sequence, kind of the way that like previous episodes in the first three episodes especially had. And it left a little bit on the table or to be desired, in my opinion, especially as far as like the actual taking down of Kingpin in this series. Just the kind of forced therapy session that she kind of forced him to go through was a bold choice, and I don't know that it was one that I would have made or that I was expecting or that I kind of wanted to see. So that was the biggest one for me. It didn't ruin it. It's not like it wasn't, she didn't rip the page of Echo open and go berate the producers of the show in some meta way or anything, but it did leave a lot to be desired from just a climactic standpoint for me. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of feedback too. but so that was the big one for me. The second one was I really enjoyed all the supporting characters, but I think I would have enjoyed them a little more had they been intermingling a little bit, because it seemed like they all approached Echo in a one-on-one basis, so that I didn't really get this family dynamic that they were portraying for her supporting cast here, like all the other Choctaw people, her two cousins, her grandma and grandpa. I got a little bit of that between the grandma and grandpa, but you almost exclusively get that between them and Echo, not them together. And I thought a few more scenes of those people around her just being people would have kind of endeared me a little bit more to them, or made them, a little bit more memorable than they were, especially in the likes of like Bonnie, who I thought was going to be a little bit more important based on the first 10 minutes of the show. And she really kind of wound up being like, I don't know anything about Bonnie other than she's a fireman, and she's nice. That much I can gain from her character, but that's about all the depth I got from her.
I have another thing on Bonnie. She gets taken hostage a lot by henchmen of Kingpin.
Yeah, she kind of works as the damsel in distress, like trope, in that, it is what it is. We don't even see how she gets caught the second time. We just assume. So there was a few things that I don't know if it was due to only having 5 episodes, a shorter episode length than other series that they've done, or if I don't know what the decision was behind the scenes to not have this much stuff. But I think if two things,
would you have preferred if they had less backstory from Maya as a kid, and then a lot of repeat from the Hawkeye show? In the first episode, which took about half an hour, which made the first episode actually quite long compared to the rest. Would you have preferred if they cut that down a little bit and give it a little bit more into the family dynamic?
I would have been okay with that. And I thought about this a little bit today, if they would have almost combined a few of the characters. I didn't hate any one character, like supporting character, especially in particular, to the point that I would say, just kind of join them in. But I do feel like almost the uncle character and the grandpa character could have almost been merged into one character here. And it would have kind of left room for you to get to know them a little bit more than the 5 episodes allowed, and the kind of half half an episode in those 5 episodes that you really got to know these people, given the backstory and the lore, flashbacks, and all that other stuff, which I did enjoy. But I don't know if I changed the first episode as much, only because like I do like that you didn't really need to see Hawkeye to understand, and it brought you up to speed almost fully in like 15, 20 minutes. But then after that, there was just maybe a few of the montage scenes where Echo just driving around on a motorcycle could have been swapped out for something else with a little bit more chemistry between the supporting cast is really it. Like I said, I didn't dislike anyone, but it's like I almost felt like I didn't get a chance to know too many of them all that deeply, other than this one's the damsel, this one's the comic relief, this is the, funny grandpa. That's kind of the slice that I got from each of those. But what I did enjoy about the series, I already mentioned it, but the action sequences I really enjoyed. Like, I had a lot of fun, especially in the first 2 or 3 episodes whenever Echo's just finding herself surrounded by a mob of henchmen and beating them to a pulp. And I just loved that. The Daredevil cameo was great. Even I mentioned this on the board, but even like the train sequence in the second episode, like it's not your standard fight sequence, but it's still an action sequence, and I really had a lot of fun watching that.
Well, so I have a question about the Daredevil cameo, because it was announced with some hoo-ha that Matt Murdock, Daredevil, would be in the show, and it actually was like 2 minutes, and then he was gone. Very disappointed about that.
No, I didn't expect it as early as we got it, but I was perfectly satisfied with that. I didn't, especially like, taking myself out of this show and thinking about the future. Like, there's a Daredevil show coming out. I wouldn't want him to be like in every episode of this. There's only 5 episodes. Like, let's get to Echo. Let's learn Echo's story. Let's dip into that. I'm perfectly fine with the bit of cameo we got. Now, I will say that the flashback sequences with Maya as a child, I actually really enjoyed a lot more than I expected to the point where half of me would have more wanted like a Maya origin story rather than like a sequel to Hawkeye, just seeing more of kind of the influence that Kingpin would have had on her as a child versus just her everything that was going on there. So, not that I didn't enjoy this, though. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, well, these scenes are cool. Let's get more of that. But yeah, I loved a lot of the dialogue. The one thing I will say that I'm kind of on the fence about, and I think it's a bold choice, but for your main character to basically only be able to communicate via sign language is a bold choice for any visual medium, because we're waiting for her to register sign language in every conversation. Especially the scenes where there was an interpreter, I thought like there's almost a delay in like somebody says something, okay, the sign language happens, and then Maya reacts. And I really applaud the ability to do that and keep me focused, because I didn't feel like this was a slog at all in any of these sequences. But I do think that could be a stopping point for a lot of people for enjoying the show. So I do think that like that could be where you lose a lot of people's interest, because the dialogue is very slow paced and you're waiting for translations to happen. It's why a lot of people shut off like subtitled movies and things like that. They want to get the information now, and this is like a decision that slows down the pacing of the dialogue scenes.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it, and I applaud their effort to like be inclusive in that, but I could understand where other people had a problem with that.
Yeah, well, that's a typical thing for people that are not used to subtitles. I mean, in the Netherlands, every single media outing, whether it's from France, Italy, Germany, America, England, whatever, is subtitled. We get the original language and it's subtitled, because children watch that, and you can't expect children to be able to understand all languages, even though English is spoken pretty much by everybody in this country nowadays. But subtitles is common. Ever since I started watching television, what is it? more than 4 decades ago.
Mhm.
Not to disclose my actual age, of course, but then yeah, I've been seeing subtitles on TV, so to me it's natural. I hardly even read them anymore. So, but when they're not there, I'm actually confused. So it's really funny how that works. But I understand it from, especially from an American point of view, that subtitles are a thing that is not common, and it can be annoying. But anyway, I actually
Yeah.
had a fun experience during my watch of Echo. The first time I watched it, I watched it one time only, but I will explain why I watched a scene twice, and that's because I had an experience. The moment in episode 3 where they cut off the power, something went wrong with my soundbar, so the sound went off, and that whole fight scene was like dead silent to me. I see the subtitles, but it was dead silent to me. I said, "Oh, whoa, that's cool. Marvel Studios is portraying this scene from the point of view of Maya. You don't hear anything, you just see." And then I finished the whole series, and I said, maybe it was a problem with my soundbar because I messed around with my remote, and then the sound came back. And it was actually at the point where they step outside and they had that conversation, and slowly the music builds up. So it actually fitted perfectly. So I went back to episode 3, fast forward to that scene, and then I hear that it was with sound and everything. So I actually was a little bit disappointed that they didn't do it. A missed opportunity, by the way, for
Yeah.
Marvel Studios. But anyway, Loki's mom, Merv, dipped into some disappointments for him. Did you have any that he didn't mention?
Well, I think you mentioned the ending. I agree. I think that it kind of just fell flat. I think on the very last episode, but um, yeah, I guess it's to set up the Daredevil, because I think the very end credit we see Wilson Fisk considering running for mayor of New York. So that's a very intriguing idea down the line. But yeah, I think yeah, I agree. I think sometimes they kind of shortchanged the other characters and some of the action for, I think, a little too much of the lore segments where we go back to the, not that they shouldn't have been any, but I think we get the idea after after one or two, but it kind of kept, it went into several different characters, and all female characters and whatnot, because this was, I guess, it's a female power that's passed down through their families. And okay, I'm getting a little feedback there. Okay, yeah, I'm getting some feedback. Okay,
Yeah.
it stopped. Um, yeah. Other than that, I didn't really have a lot of issues with it. Yeah, I did agree. I think some of the I didn't realize it till Merv mentioned it, and that was how as a child, the few scenes they did have for Maya still as a little child, and then that wonderful. I mean, oh my gosh, that scene. He goes and beats up that guy for insulting her, and then she witnesses it. He's going, "Oh, Maya," and then she walks over there and kicks the hell out of him. And it's like, okay, now we can see why he does love Maya so much. She's got that streak in her
Yeah.
that he has also. So, but yeah, I would say that would be it. It could have just been a little bit more. I think you're right that the family was shortchanged. Again, it was Graham Greene had a great part. I mean, and I'm not I can't remember the woman who plays the grandmother. I think but then the cousins, yeah, Bonnie, she was like, now she's a fireman. You'd think she would be able to kick ass a little bit more, but she really didn't. I mean, it was like, yeah, I don't know why they made a point of her character being a fireman, because that really didn't even play into it.
No.
Yeah, but other than that, it's just the ending itself, and then just like little minor things that
Hmm.
really doesn't matter, because the core of the story, I think, was pretty solid.
Yeah. Anything that stood out for you that was that you particularly said, "Oh, that's awesome," or "great," or
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
found interesting?
yeah. When they did that, now this is considering this is a Disney show, and or Disney sponsored at least, and they show this little kid as being very brutal. and yeah, and the violence that they allow. I think it was actually a little bit more than what the Netflix Daredevil version was. I mean, I think they kind of kicked it up a little level from that. So yeah, I was kind of impressed with it. So I guess Spotlight, maybe that's where they're going to put some of their more daring and adult fare and whatnot over
Mhm.
there. So which I appreciate that if that's what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Taylor, going to you. People also on this panel has mentioned the ending of the show, and that they made some choices that are, well, being questioned online, of course. Um, the wasn't the ending where she gave Wilson Fisk the therapy more like a setup that Wilson Fisk just doesn't want to be a good person, that he or want to heal his trauma. He wants his trauma, and he wants to use his trauma to become to stay on as that criminal mastermind that he is. Wasn't that more the setup? And then we see, of course, him potentially running for major in New York. A mayor, is it mayor? And I mean, we've seen that before in the Netflix Daredevil shows, I think, if I recall correctly. Are those shows now officially not canon? I know you always love these kind of questions, so.
Well, I think it's actually been settled that they are canon at this
Oh.
point because in the trailer for Echo, they actually showed flashback scenes from the Netflix Daredevil show of young Wilson Fisk of when he was a child. That was actually in the trailer for this show.
Mhm.
Now, whatever. If you want to say it's official or someone wants to argue the point, at this point, I don't
Yeah,
care that much.
it's a
It's not
multiverse.
the same.
Everything is canon now.
And that sure looked like the same hammer to me. I don't know. Because hammers don't cross over universes, I don't think. But you're right. I think everyone can be happy whether they want it to be canon or not at this point. Because I think we're going to move on, move forward.
Yeah. Okay. Any particular things you didn't like about the show, or was it all roses?
Um, as far as the ending goes, I didn't dislike it. I thought it was a little bit, you know, rushed or forced. Um, yes, we saw throughout the whole series of, we knew she was going to get some sort of superpower passed down from way back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I thought the scene in the barn where she got the power and she was able to give it to her grandmother and her cousin and fight off the henchmen. And then she did the thing where she got into Wilson Fisk's head. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was actually kind of good. I mean, she couldn't, even with superpowers, she's not going to fight Wilson Fisk and win. So I thought it was actually good. Wilson, Kingpin is such a interesting villain. And of course D'Onofrio does a spectacular job playing him. Um, but he doesn't really have superpowers, and other than comic book ridiculous amount of strength and durability. So most of his threat to superhero is not, in a one-on-one fight. Like usually he would get beat by Spider-Man or, Daredevil usually. Um, but most of his power, of course, is his wealth, his organization, his army of well-armed and trained people, and his ability to corrupt or institutions and get inside of all that stuff. So that's where he becomes a threat to even to superhero level people. So having him and Maya, have a big fight probably wouldn't have looked right anyway. And you're probably right that they were trying to set up something that she got into his head and tried to be a peacemaker and tried to get him to reform a little bit, and it seemed like it
Healed
didn't
him.
take with him. It didn't take, yeah. So it seemed like he hasn't changed much, and now he's
Mhm.
going to do a penguin and run for mayor. Uh, and I don't know, we'll see. Hopefully it'll be a good show, but I'm kind of tired of the penguin running for mayor storyline. But maybe they'll do it a lot better in the Daredevil show.
Mhm.
One thing that surprised me, actually, the show surprised me at the very beginning, the opening scene. I was really surprised to see that what I assume is like a Choctaw or a someone's Genesis story, origin
Mm-hmm.
story, creation story. I was really surprised to see that. I was like, I was not expecting that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that goes back to an Infinity Stone or what, but they got powers and they came to Earth, and these powers somehow get passed down through the gene. And maybe it's the next gene. I don't know. Maybe we'll find out someday. But
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really matter. It's the fact that this whole story is about her gaining not just the power, but of course the wisdom, and the whole thing about warrior or healer, or when to be which. You can be both, and when it's smarter to do one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, the final scene, it felt a little bit off to me. It just felt a little bit off, but I can't really put my finger on and say, oh, it was terrible, or they should have done this instead. It
Mm-hmm.
felt a little bit off. Other than that, like I said, I don't really have any main. I agree with Merv that the action scenes were all really well done. I liked, especially the scene in the roller rink. As you said, was one of my
Mm-hmm.
favorite action scenes. Uh, I love the scene with Daredevil. I'm glad he was only in one episode, because a major character like that would have taken over the show if they were in it much more than that, and it would have, of course, taken away from Maya's story, which is the point of the show.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. So it was fine that he was there. Had a good action scene with him, good fight with him and Maya, and the other henchmen. So that all worked for me. The flashbacks, yeah, there were a lot of them, but they were kind of needed for, because they did say, this is Spotlight. You don't have to watch other stuff, but you kind of did have to know quite a bit of stuff from other from other things. So they put them all there in the flashback. Her father being killed by uh, a Hawkeye, and him telling her that it was actually Fisk, and her shooting Fisk, and so on and so forth. So I thought they did a pretty decent job of setting up everything so that people wouldn't be completely lost if they hadn't watched the previous things. I liked the dialogue, whether it was verbal or sign language. I think there was a lot of really good dialogue throughout this show. The conversations felt very real and well thought out. The supporting cast I thought was all good. Graham Greene is always great. I love that guy. He's so good. Um,
Mm-hmm. Well, I could have done with a little less banter between Grandpa and Grandma.
mhm. Yeah, they maybe didn't need that much. I like that.
Yeah.
I think the show was actually about the right length, though. I'm glad I don't think it. They could have padded it out and made it 6 episodes like the others, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it really needed to be much longer than what it was. And if it was any shorter, then it would have just been a movie, or could have just been a movie. So I think it was pretty good. I think they did a good job of showing, where she came from and where everyone was at this point after she had been gone for 20 years. I liked that the climax happened at the Choctaw annual powwow event there, and how that was carried off, and we got to see little glimpses of that event and the way it's carried out, and all the fun that everybody is having there. I thought it was kind of cool that Biscuits was able to drive the monster truck over those two vans and trap the all those guys with the guns in there. That would have been a
Mm-hmm.
real bloodbath if he hadn't been able to do that. So it was good that this guy, who's just kind of a funny guy, not trying to be a hero, or not cut out to be a hero, maybe, was able to lend a hand and play a major role. Yeah, all the action scenes, this, like Murph said, the scene with the train was really good. The jumping off,
Mm-hmm.
the flashback scenes to the different stages, or different, whatever you want to call it, generations of people who had these
Yeah.
powers and how they used them.
Her ancestors.
Maybe a
Mm-hmm.
little bit much, but like I said, that they served their purpose, because obviously they were building up to her getting these powers, and they had to show us a little bit of what they were and what they could do.
Mm-hmm.
The scene of the lacrosse game was actually kind of interesting for me. Maybe a little bit longer than it needed to be, but they,
Mm-hmm.
it's their show. They can show it, make it as long as they want. As far as like you said, we're going to talk about the online hate later. But overall, again, not the best thing Marvel's ever produced by any means. Doesn't need to be. I like that they want to do a side story. If she shows up again at some other point in the MCU, I mean, it is the MCU, so it's very possible that she'll show up again. As long as it makes sense for her to be there, I'm fine with it. But if we're done, we've seen Echo's story, and we're not going to see her again, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, I think despite her, before I get old people sensitive, my English is not that good. So, disability, despite her disability, I think she's a very good actress, and she conveys her emotions very well, and you can totally tell her emotions while she's doing the sign language. It's excellent, and I commend her because it's not easy to carry a show in the way she did when you have that kind of a disability or disadvantage or whatever you want to call it. If I did hurt your feelings with these comments, I don't care. Merv, you had a follow-up.
Yeah, just a couple of three things that I was reminded of whenever Taylor was talking. I found the Gunslinger silent film flashback, like especially stylistically and everything. That was by far my favorite flashback. I really liked how that one was portrayed, especially once it got into the whole silent film feel to it. Like I really enjoyed that one. Andrew Howard played Zane, Kingpin's main henchman. It's today I realized that that's not James Russo. I have been mixing those two guys up in my head for like 20 years, it feels like. And I looked it up today and I'm like, I swear it's that guy. Nope. Turns out it's not. If you don't know James Russo is the corrupt sheriff in Open Range. Andrew Howard played Bad Frank Phillips in the Western Hatfield McCoy series. And for some reason in my brain, those two were the same guy. But I really enjoy both of them separately. But I thought it was together up until today, whenever I looked up a cast list. The hardest I laughed in this whole series, TV, whatever, was when Biscuits was driving the broken truck past Grandma.
Yeah.
I died whenever he's just staring and there's no words and he's just like staring as he's driving. I bust a gut during that whole scene. I thought that was great. Those are just a couple thoughts that whenever Taylor was talking, I was reminded of.
Look, Merv, I totally get it that you mix up actors. I mean, I had the same thing with Jamie Presley and Margot Robbie. I thought they were the same. So, and all blonde
Never
white
seen them
women look
together.
alike. That's true. Okay. Before I really get racist about blonde white women, which you shouldn't do, Lokismom, you also had a follow-up.
Yeah, it was like a little quirky thing. It kind of popped out during the lacrosse scene, which I thought was neat because that's the Native American, it originated with Native Americans, and lacrosse is a big sport, collegiate sport anyway in the U.S. and so I thought that was bringing that out was nice. But during that scene, they kept going to the stadium, the stands, and there's one character. Now this is I'm assuming like around 1200 or something like that,
That's what they
and
said.
so they said something like that close to it. Um, there's a character who has what looks to me like a European shirt and a vest on, and there's also like little clamps going, which look very out of place as Native American dress to me. I really was kind of they only show. I think they actually do show the character twice in the stands, and so if anybody just wants to go back and look at that, just that one scene, and just what do y'all think? Because I thought, now what is that? What are they saying here? Because remember, this is Marvel multiverse, and is this a character that's, I don't know. It was just kind of, it's just weird. It stood out to me. But
Okay.
yeah, going back to what the Fisk thing. The first episode, and I will say this, I meant to mention it before, was there was like a fantastic jump cut. I mean, it was from when Maya is a child. I think just after her um, ninja has assassinated his her father, and then Fisk has put her in with to learn the martial arts and all that. And it goes from her as a child to Maya as an adult in like a split second in that ring. And I thought that was really good because I will say that I think the Daredevil, you really would have had to know a little bit more about Fisk, or you would have understand Fisk better if folks have seen the Daredevil series, because he is really fleshed out much more there. And so I think
Mm.
if people who haven't seen that, I think they may be seeing Fisk, and they don't know who he is. I mean, it just didn't make sense what happens to him, because yeah, he had a very horrific childhood, and that certainly turned him into who he was. And going into, if he's going to be a big part of the Daredevil, and I think what's the name of the series? It's Daredevil Born Again. So I think
Correct.
I think it's going to have a very spiritual, very kind of like how Daredevil actually went into religion and whatnot. So they may be setting something up for that. So yeah, I mean, sometimes I think we just have to have some patience and whatnot with these the characters and everything, because there's a lot that's already been done about them. And if I think it's up to the fans, if they've just jumped in at this point, maybe go back and review some of the older stuff, and it's
Yeah.
available. So
Yeah, absolutely, on Disney Plus actually. So, by the way, somebody mentioned that they went a little bit more graphic in this show than they did in the Daredevil show. I would disagree, because didn't we get like Wilson Fisk banging somebody's head between the car door in that series? So that was also pretty graphic. But that's not the devils in the details. Daredevils in the details. But anyway. Um, yeah, like I said before, we had you get online. There are some people who are naysayers from the beginning, and I must admit, I wasn't too keen on an Echo show. But as always, I watched the trailer, and I was excited a little bit more. I watched the show because I have to give it a fair shot, and well, I'm happy we got the show. It was good. It wasn't the best, but it's good. So, how do you guys feel about like people that just go right out and say this is bad? I didn't even finish watching it, or I couldn't even get through the first episode, or whatever, and then they just trash it online. And of course, a lot of people that are having that Marvel fatigue. I mean, a lot of people jumped off the bandwagon. They see a reconfirmation of their thoughts on the current state of Marvel. Is that fair? Yeah. You know what, Lokismom, you can take it away first.
well, that you're always going to have that. You're always going to have that like 30% of creeps who just nothing's going to satisfy them, and they'll find something to tear it down. Um, yeah, if you haven't seen the series, or only looked at the first half of the first episode, I mean, you got no cause to complain about it. Uh, you can maybe you complain about the fact that it was made in the first place. I don't know, but why anybody would object to that? But yeah, if you're gonna critique a show, at least watch the thing. If you got legitimate complaints at the end of it, then that's a different thing. But to just trash it for the sake of trashing it, nah, that's immature, silly, and I don't pay too much attention to that if I can help it.
Yeah, we are all a little bit older, except Merv, he's a puppy. But I think we all tend to watch what we get and then judge that, and not so much, have like a preconception. Oh, this has a deaf, disabled character in it, and it's a female, and whatever they get into. I don't know, Native American. They drag everything but the kitchen sink in there, and then trash it without even watching it. I think in that case, if you haven't watched it, just don't say anything about it. Just don't ignore it. I think that's better than just go online say, I couldn't get through the first episode, so I didn't watch it. It was so terrible, and yeah, hey, what's the point, Murph? How do you feel about it?
You have a great Southern accent there, Grandmaster.
Oh, is that the case? Well, maybe I am from the south without me knowing.
Um, I think it's far too often reviewers, or especially now in like the social media world that we're in, people lack the ability to be nuanced about their opinions. It's everything is either the best thing ever and must see TV or whatever, or it's the worst thing, which is more often. It's literally the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of mankind. And if you watch this, you're probably a worse person afterward. To me, like a healthy shades of gray throughout all that just make the most sense. Like, is this the best thing the MCU's ever done? No. I didn't expect that though. I don't know who sat down to watch this Echo series and expected the best thing the MCU's ever made. I expected it to be entertaining. Like I expect everything I'm going to sit down to watch to be entertaining. If I'm not, then it becomes disappointing. But like, to what degree? Like this didn't kick my dog or anything. I don't need to be that angry about it. But like, if you watch a lot of, and I know this is going on YouTube, but if you watch a lot of YouTube critics, it's just like it's almost as if somebody had a gun to their head and forced them to watch it against their will, and they're traumatized afterward. Like, it's really a weird thing. And it's not just this. It's not just the Marvel MCU. It's a lot of other things too. I recently watched Rebel Moon. There was a lot of that too. People just, I don't know what you sat down to watch, but you don't need to be this mad about it. And I'm with you. If I don't like something, well, maybe not right away, but if I know I'm not going to like something, if there's a history, if there's a pattern of me not liking something, I'm probably going to not watch it anymore. But I feel like there's a lot of people who just love hating to watch things. And there's so much good TV and movies out there that I couldn't fathom spending any amount of time continuing to watch stuff that I like systematically hate. Like if every product that comes out I hate, I'm probably going to look for a different product. But there's too many people out there, I think, that do not have that mindset. And I don't know why. I don't know why people would put themselves through it.
Look, we have a review channel, so we sometimes watch something and that we don't really like. We start a Secret Invasion run, and then it turns out, well, let's just say it wasn't the best show I ever watched. And that was very disappointing for me. And I will say that. But I at least have watched it. And I think I know what I'm talking about at that moment. And maybe I'm not a high-profile critic or know a lot about filmmaking or TV making or whatever, so I cannot really critique from a professional point of view. I just know I'm a fan, I like something or I don't. Doesn't mean I'm going to hate it. I mean, the people that worked on Secret Invasion, they deserve our respect for making that show. Maybe it wasn't the best, and I'm allowed to say that, but it doesn't mean I have to trash the people that made it. And that happens also sometimes, and that annoys the crap out of me. But anyway, Taylor, I want to hear your point of view. You have no doubt some wise words for us.
Maybe not wise, but I have words.
No.
I have no problem if someone watches something and they don't like it and they tell us they don't like it and they have their reasons, and it could be perfectly subjective reasons. Like Loki's mom said, every character on every show ever made has their haters. Okay, someone who says this character ruins the show for me. Okay, if that's how you feel, that's fine. That happens with everybody. And then there are people who have different preferences. There are people who prefer action shows that have male heroes. There are people who prefer action shows that have female heroes. Fine, personal preference. I can watch a movie or a show that's not, my type of show. Like I sit down with a friend who's watching a show and I sit down and watch it with them. And I can say, well, I don't really like this show, but I can also say it's not the worst show ever made. The people who made it knew what they were doing, and they did a good job of making what they were making. It's just not made for me. And again, and people want to go online and say all that, fine, go ahead and say all that. But what we have going on now is not just people hating particular shows and movies and franchises and studios, but they're actually actively trying to sabotage shows and movies and franchises and studios with their, oh, I've got a source in Disney who says this show is a disaster and the executives are terrified, and that's why they're dropping all the episodes at once because it's the worst thing that's ever been made. And then they go on to, Rotten Tomatoes, and they, give the 1 star out of 10 or half a star out of 10. Really? So Echo is worse than My Mother the Car. This is the worst TV show that's ever hit the airwaves. I'm sorry, it's not that bad. And
Now I
then they
had to
go on
come.
there and they're like,
I remember seeing that TV show too.
"Oh, I have too. I punished myself with
Well, I
it a
saw
couple
it when
times."
it originally came on.
But and then they come up with all the crazy, they can tear apart any movie or TV show ever made. If I wanted to tear down Citizen Kane, if I watched it going in thinking I'm going to find ways to tear it apart, I'll find ways to tear it apart. Okay, it's too easy. And then with this show, oh, how did Kingpin survive getting shot? Have you ever read comic book in your life? If there's anything comic book writers know how to do, it's keep people alive and bring them back to life. Is it so much harder to think that she accidentally jerked the trigger and only grazed him? Or is it harder to think that if you get bit by a spider, you'll get spider powers? Or that Bruce Banner can survive a nuclear explosion? No, you just can't believe that Kingpin, you know, flinched and she jerked the trigger and it only hit him across the skull and didn't hit him square in the head. That's impossible. Took me right out of the show. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But so again, this is the problem I have. It's not okay. There are people out there who have fairly big followings who they may have started out being fairly fair with their criticisms and their reviews and stuff, but I think they figured out I get a lot more clicks if I go in there full bore and I have really funny insults and attacks on these things. And then they're like, oh, I can get even more clicks from people who hate this studio or whatever if I tell them I have inside information and I know that this is gonna be horrible. And then when the ratings are low, I can say, see, I was right, it was horrible. When actually it was everybody online saying how terrible it's going to be might have caused some of the ratings to go down. So
Yeah.
it gets for me that I have no no use for people that are doing that sort of thing.
Hmm. I agree. Well, people, we have discussed
Oh,
that. Yeah, sorry,
can I?
Lokismom.
Yeah, stereotypes. Yeah, they really did not. Well, I'll just say it. They didn't do the white people well in this story. I think they brought out a lot of historical points that were legitimate because one scene I remember in the backstory, it may have been the cross scene where that says Mississippi, and this reminds us that these people were taken from Mississippi to Oklahoma against their will, put in the Indian territory. They didn't really dwell on that a lot. I think they kind of left it, but then when they did get to present day, all of the characters, as far as the white folks, and this is set in Oklahoma, and we can consider that part of the South in a sense. Yeah, they're very stereotypical. Um, Even the white couple of the trading post, and then that's very stereotypical. The Indian, the Indian trading guy, and he cheats them into buying some crap from China or whatever, saying it's legitimate,
Yeah.
legitimate, made on our, and then they flip it over, whatever. But yeah, it's just stuff like that. I think that it was a little heavy-handed there at times, and I think that some people can object to that. And speaking as a Southerner, I think Southern people have legitimately been portrayed in some instances and poorly portrayed in other instances in American entertainment. And I just wanted to put that out there.
That's fair. Taylor?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think that couple in the store might have been the only white people other than the gangsters in the whole show. I think most of all the other characters were Native American, and it was on the reservation. But the cultural aspects of this show, I thought were mostly handled well. The Native American cultural aspects of it, it didn't get heavy-handed. It didn't get mired down. One criticism I had of Ms. Marvel was at times I thought I was watching a documentary about Pakistani culture. It got so, on the nose with it. Whereas here, I didn't feel that way at all. It felt very natural. We were seeing these people. We were seeing how they
Mhm.
live. They're living on a reservation. They live just like normal, just like everyone else in America. It's almost impossible to tell it apart from any other town. Small town in America. They have their jobs, they have their clothes, they have their annual event that celebrates their history. And I thought all that was handled actually quite well and, subtly, so that it didn't become annoying or didn't overwhelm the story,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I will admit I'm not the biggest expert on American history. I know some of it, of course, but I never got the impression that it was like biased towards one group or the other. They portrayed it the way it is in that particular show, in that particular town, with that particular set of characters. And yeah, those that white couple in the store, they came across as a little bit gullible, but yeah.
Well, the guy who worked in the roller rink, the braided shoes,
Yeah.
and his two female cohorts was pretty stereotypical.
Yeah, and they were also not too smart.
Right.
I think they shared one brain cell together, but between the three of them. But anyway, well, I think it's time to rate the Echo Show. So here we go. Out of 10, Merv, how do you rate Echo?
I'm going to give this one a 7.5 out of 10.
Okay, nice number. Lokismom?
Yeah, 7.5.
Okay. Sailor?
I'm going to give it an 8.8432 and I'm going to have to round that up to a 9 just for conversation.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give Echo an 8. I really enjoyed it for what it was, and I see it as a win for Marvel, and that's the third win in a row we got in a short period of time, and that actually makes me quite happy. I wouldn't just say yet Marvel's back, but they are certainly upping their game. But what's next? We actually don't know. That will conclude our review of Champions for Echo. We hope you have enjoyed our discussion today. If you did, you can help us out by liking and sharing this review and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you really want more of us, you can join our forum at sokar.freeforums.net. We would love it if you do that. For now, I thank you all also on behalf of our champions, and we wish you to be safe and be well. Bye.